UK IP leader, Nigel Farage. Nigel, thanks so much for weighing in this morning.
Thank you.
Your reaction to the election results first.
Well, I think Mrs. May makes a mess of it. I mean, she had a parliamentary majority. We triggered Article 50. The negotiations with the European Union are due to start in 11 days' time, and the next election was not due until 2020. She forced this fresh election upon the country, and she's failed. And while she's just about crept back with the support of some Northern Irish unionists, I think her credibility is completely and fatally damaged, not just here, but in the eyes of the European Union too.
Nigel, one of the reasons that Brexit seemed to make so much sense is because the UK economy was so much freer and stronger than the EU it was leaving. But doesn't this election result inevitably mean that economic policy in the UK moves left? Whether or not it's a Conservative or a Labour-led minority government, this looks like undermining the kind of economic argument that made Brexit such a potentially beneficial move.
Yes, I think I agree with that. And I have to say, I mean, there were no obstacles in our course at all. Whilst her majority wasn't big, it was big enough. And she's risked everything just to give herself, you know, an increased majority, and it really has come undone.
Nigel, can you expand on that? Sorry, it's Kevin.
Yeah.
So why exactly did she do this? Because you just laid out the case, and I've been confused this whole time. Yeah. Why she would, even after invoking Article 50, why would she call for the snap election? I can't find the justification, so maybe you can help shed some light on that.
Yes, I can. At one point, they were 24 points ahead of the Labour Party in the polls. Jeremy Corbyn, the hard-left leader of Labour, was doing very badly. And I think for sort of hubristic reasons, she thought this was a moment of very great victory. And, you know, when you call unnecessary elections, often the voters don't like that very much. So whilst we will still head towards Brexit, my fear now, you know, as a leading Brexiteer, is we will start to water down and soften the economic package, which will keep us, you know, quite closely trapped inside a model that is not good for our global economy.
Nigel, it's Dagan McDowell. Jeremy Corbyn, clearly based on the numbers, the Labour Party leader, will not be the Prime Minister of the country. But this man, if Americans don't understand how left-leaning, he doesn't even lean left. As someone said earlier, he's left of Bernie Sanders. His approach, his policies, should people fear a kind of left-leaning policy, particularly economic policy in Britain?
Well, if the election had gone about 10 seats the other way, we'd be facing the prospect of Prime Minister Corbyn. He's basically a Marxist. He's cozied up over the years to Hamas, who he called his friends, Hezbollah, the IRA, and he absolutely loathes the United States of America. Him becoming Prime Minister would have been a disaster for relations between our two countries in terms of security, defence and trade. So thank goodness it didn't happen, but boy, he got close.
But Nigel, that's what's so perplexing in a way, because it seems like Theresa May and the Conservatives were hurt by the recent terror attacks, and Britons feel that they're not being protected, particularly after she was Home Secretary for 6 years. So they essentially lean towards somebody who is in bed, if you will, with terrorist organizations.
Well, do you know something? I think we can analyse this result too much in terms of policy. I think in the end what it came down to was personality. Mrs. May was very wooden, very robotic, looked totally insincere, refused, can you believe, to do a head-to-head television debate and hid away from the public. Jeremy Corbyn, if I take the politics out of it, which I can't stand, Jeremy Corbyn toured around the country looking about 30 years younger than his age. There was energy, there was activism. Like Trump, he held big rallies where big crowds of people turned up. He gave an anti-establishment message, and he looked comfortable in his own skin. And I think really the story of the last few weeks, it's not about Brexit, it's not about the appalling terrorist attacks, it's actually about the characters and the personalities that came through in the campaign. And on that contest, Corbyn won, and what he got is a lot of young voters who don't normally vote looked upon him being like a rather friendly old uncle and turned out in their droves to vote for him.
Yeah, somebody just tweeted out, Maria, the UK has just elected Bernie Sanders as their head. God help them. Somebody just tweeted that out. But Kevin, you asked an important question just a moment ago. If not Theresa May, who will be the Prime Minister of the UK?
Yeah. So Nigel, I'm curious about who you think is going to, if Prime Minister May has to step aside, who can fill in that void? I mean, during the original Brexit talks, people were looking to Boris, even though he wasn't part of the government at the time in the normal succession.
Yeah, look, I mean, Mrs. May will be at the palace to see the Queen in 15 minutes' time, as per our constitutional requirements. I think, to form a government, to form a coalition government, she has to go there as the sitting Prime Minister. So constitutionally, she wasn't going to resign this morning. But I think she will not be there for very long at all. Who will it be? My guess is the two front-runners would be Boris Johnson or David Davis, both of whom were on the Brexit side. You see, the mystery,
yeah.
And I know Fox viewers could never get this over the course of the last year. The mystery was Mrs. May voted Remain. Mrs. May was for staying in the European Union and yet became leader of a Brexit party.
Oh.
She went into this election lacking sincerity because she did not believe the words that she was speaking.
And the voters
and the Tory
saw through
party
that.
now must get a Brexiteer to lead it.
Yeah, obviously the voters saw through that, Nigel. Go ahead, Brian Brenberg.
Nigel, you're saying that this was a personality-driven result where young people looked at a Marxist and viewed him as a kindly old grandpa. That, to me, does not bode well for the future of the UK. Should we be looking at this as a canary in the coal mine kind of election?
I am slightly worried about it, but really, what Corbyn said, at the moment, if you go to university in the United Kingdom, you have to pay fees of 9,000 sterling a year. That's what the individual student has to pay, and over the 3-year period, they get racked up into debt, which you then pay back when you start off in work. What Corbyn said is, I will abolish all tuition fees for students. He was promising free money to young people, and you know what they said? Thank you very much.
Wow. Nigel, great analysis as always. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Good to see you, sir. Nigel Farage there in London.
Would still want to have us in the euro. He can't bear the thought there's even a Eurosceptic party in this country. Frankly, the more he insults us, the more he insults many of his own supporters. Because Conservative people, voters know UKIP's not racist, but it is about standing up for the country.
Theresa May, as a politician of the centre-right, do you think actually UKIP has done your cause quite a lot of good? I mean, it's gingered up the Conservatives in a way that perhaps wouldn't have happened without a party to the right of your party.
No, I think what the Conservative Party is doing is absolutely rightly looking ahead to what we can offer people at the next general election. We want, obviously, to get back with a majority government so that we can put into place the various changes that we're committed to, like the scrapping of the Human Rights Act and various other commitments that are Conservative commitments.
Would you pull us out of the European Court of Human Rights? I asked the Prime Minister, and he seemed to say yes, probably, was his... I guess I summarised, but...
Yeah, what I think is absolutely right is that we need to look at the relationship we have with the European Court and the European Convention. That work is being led by my colleague Chris Grayling at the moment. And if we need to, if it takes pulling out of the European Convention to sort out our human rights laws, then that should be on the table.
But that's fine, but we can't do that and stay a member of the European Union. The two are completely linked, you know that, and yet we never have that conversation. Are you saying we can leave that and stay part of the European Union?
What I'm saying, Nigel, is that we need to take a sensible approach in looking at how we sort out our relationship with the European Court and with the European Convention.
Well, they've become one of the same thing. They become one of the same thing. I mean, the Commission, the European Commission are perfectly clear. You cannot be an EU member if you withdraw from the auspices of the court.
OK, that stone worked quite well. One more little pebble into the pond, which is the Adam Afriyie amendment to bring the referendum forward to 2014. Do you think that's a goer, looking at the numbers and thinking about your party?
I think Adam's got it wrong. I think what we need to do is to be negotiating that settlement with the European Union and then put to the British people the Europe of the future and not the Europe of the past, and give them that opportunity of to say whether to be in or out.
But is this a flea bite or a real threat, do you think, getting this vote through?
No? I think what is crucial is that we have at the next election a Conservative Party that will be offering people that renegotiation of a new settlement with Europe, looking to the future and then putting that to the British people in an in or out referendum. Okay. And what the amendment possibly could do, as James Wharton himself, who's putting the referendum bill through Parliament, has said, is it could actually jeopardise that bill.
When do you think we're going to see the renegotiated plan? David Cameron.
Well, I don't think. I mean, there is no serious renegotiation on offer. Indeed, Mr. Barroso, the Commission President, said that this week. This is merely a tactic to kick the issue into the long grass beyond the next election. And what's going to shock the Tories is when Ed Miliband makes the same pledge for a referendum too, which he will.
This is a serious renegotiation, and then a referendum for the British people to make their decision.
On this note of genial consensus, we've run out of time. Thank you both very much indeed.
Well, welcome back to Brussels, where leaders are arriving for the EU Council. One man who won't be at the table is the UKIP MEP, Nigel Farage, who is with me now. I can't remember, are you currently leader of UKIP?
I'm leader of a group in the European Parliament, which is why I'm here.
You're not leader of the party, though?
No, absolutely not.
Can I ask you, do you feel that the result of the British general election, where Mrs May was seeking a mandate she didn't get and where UKIP's vote fell dramatically, means that all-round people are beginning to think, well, perhaps this Brexit's going to be a bit softer than it would otherwise have been?
Yes, I do. And certainly in Strasbourg last week, looking at the other group leaders and Mr Juncker, who I chatted with, sort of off-air, they were all cock-a-hoop with the general election result. They saw it as a big vote against leaving the European Union. Now, whilst Corbyn did have a lot of young Remainers that turned out for him, actually, it wasn't really about Brexit at all. But that's their mood here, and I think that the Prime Minister goes into this meeting today in a position where she needs to assert herself.
I mean, it was how she defined it, though. She said, I need a strong mandate to negotiate in Europe. She didn't get it. Surely that implies, therefore, a change from the position which she was supporting of leaving the customs union, leaving the single market, controlling immigration.
Thus far, if we take the Queen's speech, everything in that Queen's speech was consistent, at least on Brexit, with what had been in the manifesto.
We've also had the speech from Philip Hammond, which was...
I know. No, look, there's lots of pressure. I mean, oddly enough, her problem here is that they're dictating the events. They're saying, look, we're going to buy this house off you. We want you to sign for it, but you won't know what the price is until after we've completed the deal. And she needs to make it clear. We can't sign up to exit bills and all sorts of deals without at least knowing there is a prospect of some sensible trade relationship. But in many ways, I feel her problems are greater at home now than they are in Brussels.
But you were saying you feel that she's got to come out tough today when she gets her period at the dinner.
Yes, I do. I think that, and again, post the election, I thought Monsieur Barnier last week was looking very in control, absolutely setting down timelines, setting down what may be discussed now, what may be discussed later. And I think, from the perspective of getting a fair deal, we have to everything must be on the table simultaneously.
Do you accept now that no deal is not an option? That seems to be what ministers are saying.
In business terms, of course not. No, I think no deal's fine in terms of business because there's a big world out there. Politically, that now looks to be very, very difficult.
No deal's gone away, you think?
I think it probably has.
Now, what about the question which is going to come up first today of EU nationals living in the UK, UK nationals living in Europe? We're told Mrs May has got a big, generous offer to make. What do you think that offer should be?
Well, I think she should have done it a long time ago. I think that the one thing we should have put down on the table as a gesture of goodwill is to say, look, there are 3.2 million EU nationals living in the UK. They all came to the country legally because that's what was allowed. And frankly, to row back on that would class you as a banana republic. So that's the one big offer.
So what do you say? Stay here, keep your rights to access to the public services and all?
Well, you can't, as I say, you can't retrospectively change rights you've given to people. The sticking point is, would the European Court of Justice have any decisions as to their rights or not? And that clearly would be
but
unacceptable.
The big generous offer should be you can stay and enjoy the same rights.
As UK citizens, absolutely.
As UK citizens?
Yeah.
And you would expect that that would be reciprocated by European colleagues?
Can you imagine if the EU didn't reciprocate how they look in the eyes of the world?
They've been discussing this morning in the House of Parliament the question of extremism, and of course there have been incidents on both sides, Islamist extremism and also extremism by the right wing. I mean, a lot of people in the Muslim community are saying that there's been a big rise in acts of hate against their community. What do you think should be done about that?
Well, two wrongs don't make a right, but certainly there is a reaction against what is going on. Look, What the break of this is, I don't know.
What do you mean by a reaction against what's going on?
Oh, because people are becoming deeply intolerant because we saw 3 terrorist attacks in the space of 9 weeks. And that has led to an opposite reaction, a very undesirable opposite reaction. Look, if we're looking at numbers, let's not forget, just this week, we've had an attack in Brussels, an attack in Paris, and an attack in Italy. So, look, we've got to stamp out extremism in whatever form it comes. And I would just say this. I thought the biggest disappointment in the Queen's speech yesterday, there was really nothing on counter-terrorism at all.